It's almost Christmas time, so I decided to make a fun little table runner for my house that's quick and easy. We can see how fast this is. Now, I'm working with the June Tailor Jacquarded Table Runner. It's a Quilt As You Go, and I've only made one of these before, and basically everything is numbered, and I'm going to walk you through how to do it. I'm going to be using half of a jelly roll, and there are instructions. This is my binding, and this is my backing. I'm using the Christmas Stitch collection because I always love Fig Tree. It matches my house really well. When I put the backing on, I am going to use some basting spray, and I'm going to be using a size 90 top stitch needle and a walking foot, and I'll probably use the seam press roller a little bit as I go. So we're going to time this and see how well I do. I'm going to keep notes and I'll let you know how it works out. So let's get started. So recently Jill Rep came to the studio and she showed the June Tailor Quilt As You Go stuff, and I just really wanted to try one by myself. I am starting with the Jacquarded Table Runner because I was thinking this one would actually be doable and I would actually use it in my house. So what I'm doing here is I am using Christmas Stitched, and I decided to not use basting spray. She did use basting spray in all of her videos, but I thought I could get away without doing it. So basically I just laid my backing fabric with the batting and just trimmed around, and I tried to get it where the words were a little bit straight on the back. And again, I didn't use basting spray. And I did have all of my fabric starched before I started. And then here, what I'm going to do is iron and try to get all those creases out. And like I said, I've already starched everything before I started, even my jelly roll. And here, I just want to make sure I get my creases out, because if I don't, then when I'm quilting, I feel like the creases will kind of stay in there. So get all my creases out, and there I just used a tiny bit of spray starch just to kind of get the crease really nice and out. So that's what I'm doing there. And this is actually the first time I'm doing Quilt As You Go with one of these pre-made battings. And so when you're stitching, what you'll do is you're gonna stitch on the line. No, you're gonna line up the fabric on the line, and you're gonna just stitch a 1/4 inch away. So those lines right there are placement lines. So I've put the first strip down, and then I put the second one on top. And I'm just lining up the edges, and I decided to go ahead and pin just in case that helped. And since the backing is on there, the pins really did help to keep it where the backing didn't move. And I decided to use a walking foot. June Tailor said you don't really have to. But right here, I'm just kind of checking my stitches, checking my stitch length. I decided to go with a 3.0 stitch length, and I'm stitching a 1/4 inch away. Whatever stitch you use is totally fine. Just use the same stitch throughout. And again, that line is a placement line, which that was the hardest thing for me to kind of get used to. And I just stitched a little bit past, maybe like a quarter inch past. And then here I'm going to really pull those strips. And when I pull the strips, I'm using the roller, and I'm pulling the strips so that it will not have like a duck pleat. And then here, the one thing you want to do is you're not supposed to iron on the batting at all, only on your fabric. So I guess the batting will get kind of sticky on your iron. So I've got the first one down, and I just tried to be really careful to get everything nice and flat. And then from here, if you notice, you're going by numbers. So you start with 1, 2, and then now I can do 3 and 4 at the same time. So I'm gonna pin those in place. I did feel like the pinning really did help because you've got so many layers. And just use whatever pins you normally use. And the end of the strips, you'll have a tiny bit left over that you could save if you wanted to for another project. And after I pin, I just look on the back and kind of smooth it out just to make sure that it is staying nice and flat. And I wish I could sew this fast. That would be so awesome. Now you could try this without a walking foot. June did hers without a walking foot. And you can see I started about a 1/4 inch before. I think you're supposed to start right on that line, but just out of habit, I went a 1/4 inch away. And again, just that same technique, pull the fabric, press your seam roller, get all those creases flat, and just cut your edges when you kind of get a lot going. And then I kind of, the whole time, what I did was just use that seam press roller, got everything really flat before I ironed. I just felt like it kind of made it have no creases. And I would say on this project, you really want to just take your time. It's going to look a lot better if you take your time and just kind of get everything nice and flat and just continue doing that all the way across. Now here what I decided to do was draw a line with friction pin on that straight horizontal line, and then that way I knew exactly where to cut, because I cut about a 1/4 inch away, and I was afraid if I didn't draw that line I would cut too close. And I kind of just started doing that so that I wouldn't have too much excess, and at some point you have to know where that line is. So drawing that line, it does go away with heat, but you know, just try to keep where I was at. And again, you just keep going, you keep adding to both sides. So here at the bottom, I'm just drawing that horizontal line just so I have something to, I'm just afraid if I don't draw that line, I'll cut too far in. And I kind of felt like it kind of kept my work a little bit neat and helped me really line up that next line or the next fabric so I wouldn't have too much or too little. And this one, because your fabrics are getting shorter, you can actually use your fabric on 2 lines. So I used it on 7 and 8. And right here, you can see that I kind of was getting a little bit where the fabric was going way too far off. So I trimmed it so it would be straight with that line so that I wouldn't have, you know, too much excess. So I kind of just took the time to do that. And then you can see you're using that full strip by using it on 2 different ones. can see when I'm ironing, I'm trying to iron where I don't iron over those lines too much because I need those as a guide a little bit later. So I just kind of ironed on the strips and tried to not iron on that line that I'm drawing. And that's kind of something I just kind of came up with. I don't think you're really supposed to do that. That was just something that was helpful for me. Now when I get to the end, what I'm going to do is draw that line all the way on all four sides just to make sure I still have it. And then what I decided to do was to add some quilting to the top. It's totally not required. I decided to do it just because I thought it would look nice, and I did it before I added the lines on the side because I wanted to be able to kind of hide the start and the stop of those quilting lines. And I would suggest using a new needle when you start this project just because you're going through so many layers, and then definitely change your needle after. I decided to use a size 90. And so what I did is I kind of checked my tension, but first thing I did was I stitched outside the line on all four sides just to kind of stabilize it. That's going to get cut off later. But I just did that so that it would keep it nice and flat while I was adding the quilting. And right here, I just start adding the quilting. I decided to use a 3.5 stitch length so that my stitches would be longer and they would look more quilty and less stitchy. And then I just used the little guide on my, or the left side on the presser foot, and I just started and stopped about a 1/4 inch away. And I did all to the right on one side, and then in a little bit you'll see that I flip it and then I just do the other side, and that way you don't have to turn as you go. And I just did some lines on the left and the right, and totally optional. I did use the just Artful Color 2000. I didn't want anything too dark. I just wanted it to be cream and blend in. And as I'm quilting, you see that I kind of roll up the side, and that's just so that it won't crunch up on the bed of the machine. So just rolling it gently, and that shouldn't affect anything on the back. It shouldn't make the backing get out of whack or anything. And you can see now I'm turning it over, and then I'm just going on the other side. You could stitch right in the center if you wanted, but I think that that would kind of, I just don't think it would look as good. I feel like the double stitching looks really good. And I love that I used a Christmas fabric so I can actually like use the Tailor. I love this fabric. And I like that on the back I was able to use that sampler fabric, just because I think it's great to always use fabrics that are harder to use on the front on the back. So you can see it kind of has a quilty look now with all those lines. Now I'm just going to draw those lines one more time. And here, what you need to do is put this one horizontally on that line. But since I went a little bit over, I went a 1/4 inch over, just leave that fabric there. That's just what I did so that my stitches wouldn't come undone. I don't think that's technically how you're supposed to do it. But I just have that excess inside, and when my Tailor was done, you couldn't tell. So basically just use that drawn line as your placement line, stitch just like you did the others, and just leave that fabric in there. And again, change back to your stitch length of a 3.0 or 2.0, whatever you started with. Just so that you don't have too fat of a line. And here I just did the same thing. Just use that seam press roller, got it really nice and flat, and then iron it down. Make sure the back, the whole time you're doing this project, just make sure you're watching the back to make sure that it's staying nice and flat, you don't have any wrinkles. And you can see that to get that placement line, I kind of had to trim a little bit off just so that I could see the next placement line. And that's probably because of the way I did the first part, but I just made it work. And then just keep drawing that line. And you just keep adding, and you've just got a couple more to go, and these are really easy because they're straight. And you can use the same 3 on the left and the right if you want to. that you have everything covered up, you're gonna see why it was so important to have those lines drawn, just because now you can't see them at all. So building that line as I went helped me, and I just did the same thing by, when I stitched my strips down, I used a 3.0 stitch length, and then when I'm quilting on top, I did a 3.5 stitch length. And so just make sure you toggle back and forth. And I just did the final lines on each side and did that same thing where I stitched on the right side and then went back and stitched on the left side. And if you're wanting to try Quilt As You Go, this one is really fun because it's small. It's going to save you money. You won't have to send it to the long arm quilter, but it's just kind of a fun way to try it out. And here I've rolled the quilt so that I'm not having to scrunch it up or anything. And now what I'm doing is I am using that line that I drew to trim all 4 sides. And if you would have just sewn directly to that, you wouldn't need the line, but I wanted to sew past it so that my stitches would be a little bit more secure. So just trim on all 4 sides. And then I'm gonna baste just the inside just to get it nice and everything in place, and that those on the edge, any of those strips won't be wavy. So I just used like a basting stitch, like maybe a 4.0, and just kind of basted the sides. I think it's important, especially because right there, all of that could get out of whack. And then all you have to do is prepare your binding like you normally would and bind the edges. And this project really only took me maybe 3 hours. So would be a great Christmas gift. It'd be a great addition to your kitchen table. And then on the back, I went ahead and cut off any stray threads, because when you're starting and stopping all of the adding the strips, you've got some stray threads. So I'm just going to clean up my project so it looks nice and clean, and just give it an all over iron. And you can see, I think my biggest concern making this, because I'd never done one before, was making sure the backing didn't have any creases, and I was able to do that. So I had so much fun this morning making the jacquarded table runner. It was actually a lot easier than I thought. I thought I would have puckers on the back, but I don't, so that was really good. I just took my time. I am gonna add the binding, and that's all I have left to do. That took 2 hours, 15 minutes, and make sure to subscribe. See you next time.